Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Pain Heart and Home Healing After Loss. I am really excited for this episode because, sometimes I bring on guests and sometimes it kind of feels like an interview, and I have a lot of like scripted questions that I want to ask, but sometimes you come across people and I come across their profiles and I'm like, you know what? I just want to chat with this person, like I just want to talk about all of the things that we can talk about and relate to. So that's what we're going to do today. The guest that I have on the show, her name is Serena. She is a mother. She is also a lost mom, and she is the host of the Still Hopeful podcast. So we have a lot to talk about today, but I want to welcome Serena Zaicos. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Zaicos.
Zaicos.
It's
Okay.
my married name. It means rabbit in Greek, which I think is so beautiful.
Wow. Okay. That's very, I know.
I love
I
rabbits.
always,
That's why it's so special to
okay.
me.
I love that. And I'm like, normally I'm pretty good with last names, but sometimes I come across my last name is Smazniak, and there's a C in there and there's a Z in there, and it throws people off. So I'm like, I do my
Yeah.
best to give it a whirl, but you never know.
Hey, you did a great job. I get a lot of psychos. Well, thank you so much, Emmy, for having me on. It's such an honor to be able to find other moms who are in that same headspace, who have experienced the most tragic of losses, and like we're clawing ourselves out and finding hope and finding joy again. And so I'm just honored to be on your platform today.
Thank you. I'm honored for you to be here and for you to share your story. And that's kind of what I want to start with is I just want to give you an opportunity to just share your story from trying to conceive the first time through your loss and now through your living child. Like just give us the brief, story of how you got to where you are today.
I would love that. I love finding opportunities to talk about Christopher, my sweet angel. He's our first baby. Um, his pregnancy was beautiful. I always knew I wanted to be a mom, and as soon as we got married, I knew that was our next step. I had crossed off. I'm that typical rule follower, like kind of person where I made a list of what I wanted my life to look like, and it was like, hey, buy our house, check, get married, check, do my undergrad, check. I did my master's, check, and I'm like, okay, the next thing I want to do is be a mom. And one thing that motherhood teaches us, whether we experience loss or not, is we can plan and do our checklists all we want, but shit always hits the fan. Like, we can't prepare for everything. I hope I can say that on your podcast. We can say some.
That's okay.
Okay. Things always happen. And that's what happened with us. Christopher was so planned and so loved. And throughout his pregnancy, everything had just lined up beautifully, and I enjoyed. I was one of those people when people would ask me, "Do you love being pregnant?" I would say honestly, yes, and I would say something that to this day gives me shivers, and it's when near the end, like near the third trimester, people would ask, like, "I bet you just can't wait to have him out." And I would always say, honestly, I'm loving this right now. This is the closest he's ever going to be to me. And I remember saying that all the time, and I have goosebumps right now because that's literally is the closest he will ever be to me. And it was his loss took us so off guard. I was 38 weeks. I had anxiety throughout my pregnancy. I was the kind of person who was always checking for blood. I was so scared of miscarriages. I was always, every time I went to the bathroom, I would hold my breath and be like, and even after passing like those 12, 13 weeks, I still never felt like I was out of the woods. I even told my healthcare team I was scared of stillbirth. Like there was just something in my heart that I knew I wasn't going to have as much time with him as my heart wanted. And I can't even put like a reason as to why. I just had such anxiety of losing him. And everyone just reassured me that everything was fine. All my tests, everything was good. And then at 38 weeks, I noticed he's not moving as much. And I waited until midnight to feel him move, and I did. I went to bed and I had this dream just of this voice that said stillbirth. And it wasn't scary, even though that sounds terrifying. It honestly felt like an angel's voice. It was just calm, and it gave me this reassurance that what happens next, I'm going to survive it. And I woke up and I quickly Googled stillbirth at 38 weeks. And I couldn't shake that feeling like, why did I have this dream? And when I Googled it, it said lack of movement is the number one indicator. And so I worked up the courage to call my healthcare team. I remember I did all the things that everyone tells you to do. Lie on your side. I made like a kale and banana smoothie, like something cold, something sweet. I did it all. And I was watching Love It or List It on the couch, freaking out. And the guy, the real estate agent on the show, picks up his phone and says, "I'm just going to make this call." And I go, "Okay, I've got to make this call. I've been putting it off for like 5 minutes, shaking. I had the number ready to go." And I called my midwife and she asked me, like, when was the last time I felt him move? And I said, midnight for sure. I stayed up late because I noticed he wasn't moving. And as soon as he did, I told myself I can go to sleep. And so she said, "Is your bag packed?" And I said, "Yeah, everything's ready to go." I hopped in my car and prayed the whole drive to the hospital. I let my husband know I was heading there, and he said, "Okay, just keep me posted." And I genuinely thought everything's going to be fine. And then when they couldn't find his heartbeat, um, that's when that life is a before and an after moment. And I'm sure you feel that same way. And for the other moms listening in, like, we'll never forget who was in the room, how they said it, how we felt like the world was in color and then it went to black and white. Like, that is how it sticks. And I'm almost 3 years out. I'm 2.5. Christopher would be 2.5. And I still can replay moment by moment who walked in when, who was holding the tissues, what room I went in, what did the ultrasound machine look like. Like, I remember all of that because it will always stick with us. Um, his birth was beautiful. We did an induction right away. And it was incredibly special because while I was in labor, just before pushing, the sprinkler system in the ceiling that releases water when there's a fire, it went off. And there wasn't a fire in the room, and the room flooded to the point where I was supposed to be giving birth in the bereavement suite. I had to get moved into a regular birthing room because of this water. And what's funny is that's what my husband does for a living. He installs those pipes in the ceiling for fire
Wow.
protection. And one of the nurses told us angels are always where running water is. And she's like, "There's a lot of water
Mm.
coming down from that ceiling right now." And like, we just try to find ways of like laughing. It sounds ridiculous, but finding
Mm.
comfort and some form of laughter and just making Christopher's birth as beautiful as it could be.
Mhm.
And we were successful in that. Like, it was very calm. It was beautiful. As soon as he was born, I got to put him on my chest. And I'll never forget like how cute he is, and he looks just like my husband. I love talking in the present tense. Like, instead of saying he was so cute, I always say he is so cute. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, 22 inches. He was such a perfect size for a 38 weeker. And we received a pamphlet that told us things to do with him, to parent him. And it sounds so cold that this information came from a pamphlet. Oh, there was medical staff too guiding us, but I'm so grateful for that. I'm someone who likes to read, and I remember reading that while I was late in labor, and that really helped me with ideas of what to do with Christopher. And so I got to give him a bath because he released meconium when he was born. So like, he pooped all over me, and I just felt like this is classic mom stuff. I had to wash the poop off. I had to wash his little bum and give him a bath. And my husband and I got to dress him and put a little diaper on. And I just tried to make it as normal as possible, talking to him, singing to him. I put him to my breast. I I did a lot of things that I'm really grateful I did, but like a lot of moms, we never feel like what we do is enough. I didn't take any videos, and I wish I thought I had thought of that, but I didn't. I just have the pictures. Now I lay me down to sleep came and they took black and white photos of Christopher, and those we cherish and always will. We have them framed in our house. And I just remember trying to make it as positive and such a loving atmosphere as possible. And our parents came to see him, and our siblings, everyone got to hold him. And I feel like that helped make his loss feel really real. I can see a difference between the people who never met Christopher and who just saw photos or who have never seen photos, and those who got to hold him. Um, he's a member of our family, and he always will be. He'll always be our first. And I was in such a dark place after he was stillborn. Like all of us, it's devastating. And I realized for myself, I had to claw myself out of this darkness. And I didn't give myself a timeline, I didn't force myself. I made sure to feel everything as dark and as horrible as my emotions came. And I found once I acknowledged the deepness and the tragedy and the terrible reality of this, was I able to start finding my way towards healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
We learned he had an umbilical cord stricture, so that's how he
Okay.
passed. His umbilical cord was really small near where his belly button would be. Um, Nothing was able to detect it. I had an ultrasound a week before he was born to see if he was still breech or not, and he had flipped, and that was the main focus of the ultrasound, was to see that he flipped, and we were good to go for a vaginal delivery. But his blood flow always passed, and everything always looked good. His oxygen levels always looked good in there, and the doctor said it's something so rare. If you were to Google umbilical cord stricture, there's maybe a handful of studies that come up. And to my knowledge, no baby is born alive with this. And most babies pass in the first or second trimester. It's really a miracle that he was able to stick out for so long.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing all that. I know how much we as lost moms love to talk about our babies. It's as simple
True.
as that. What mom doesn't love to talk about her own children, and just because they're not here living on earth with us anymore, or in our arms, or in their nursery, like, that doesn't make them any less our children. And so I know how important it is for me to be given an opportunity to speak about my daughter. So thank you for sharing that story with us. There's so much about your story that I can relate to, from
Yeah,
be- being a planner and having checklists and literally going, check, check, check. That's exactly how I was before all of
exactly.
this,
Before.
happened in my before and after timeline. Like, before, that's how I was. And,
Hmm.
you when you go through something like this, that's so sudden, so tragic, so unexpected, you have to learn that, because life isn't always a checklist or a perfect, you know, picture of what you planned. You have to learn to go with the flow a little bit more. And I've certainly had to do that, and I'm sure you have as well. Another thing I related to is I loved being pregnant. Like, people would always complain about how miserable it was, and I'm like, I love this, and I can relate. I dealt with anxiety my first time around, with Layla, because I don't know. I wanted to ask you, like, where that anxiety came from, or maybe where that fear came from for you, because for me, I didn't deal with that, but for some reason, when I was driving to the hospital to get checked out, I
Hmm.
knew deep down in my spirit, in my gut, in my knower, like, that
Yeah.
something was wrong, but I didn't live in fear the whole pregnancy. So I'm curious, like, what brought that on for you? Like, what brought that anxiety, that fear of, like, literal stillbirth? Because
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that can happen. Pregnancy, living children, like, they're truly a miracle. There's a lot of things that could go
True.
wrong. So what specifically brought that fear on for you? I'm curious.
In my family, we talk openly about um, like just about how much babies really are miracles, like you said. When babies arrive earthside, it is such a miracle. And I like my mom had never shadowed the fact that she had experienced pregnancy loss. My aunt had experienced pregnancy loss. So I was very aware of it, not in a scary way. Of course it's terrifying, but like in a way where I was informed of like this could happen, and like this it's really important to be there for one another when moms and moms in our family announce their pregnancies, like to pray for them. And it's a really tender moment, and that anything in an instant can change, and that even when or even if a baby were to pass away, they're always a member of our family. So for example, my aunt, she had a stillbirth at almost full term back when I was a kid, and I remember that we still count him as one of our cousins. He'll always be one of our cousins. And so it was just part of my reality that I saw pregnancy loss happen growing up. And it wasn't something that I was sheltered from. It was something that we talked openly about. And so I think it was on my radar, was one thing that I knew it could happen. two, I truly believe my soul knew, and I was always someone who believed in signs, but ever since Christopher, like another level, and I just feel like my soul knew that he wasn't staying as long as my ego would have liked.
Sure. Okay, that's very interesting because that part I certainly can't relate to because there wasn't any. I any loss is horrible, but of course
Mhm.
there is a difference between an early on miscarriage and a full term stillbirth. Every loss is devastating, and I certainly don't make light of early on miscarriages. But there's certainly a difference. And so I had been around people who had suffered miscarriages. And I think the reason that I never experienced fear or anxiety about it is because I thought nobody ever told me you're in the safe zone. But in
Mhm.
my head, I didn't realize that there is no safe zone in pregnancy, literally none. And so I never dealt with that. And so you having that, I'll say, exposure to a close family member who had suffered a stillbirth makes sense. But what I want to talk about now is you have since you lost Christopher, you have been pregnant again and now have a living child. So I kind of want to talk about that. I'm also pregnant with my rainbow baby. And so I'm not quite to where you are yet with a living child earthside. I mean, I have 3 kids at home. They're non-biologically, or they're not mine biologically. So it's a little bit of a different, scenario, but I want to talk about that because we can relate in that way. So, finding out that you were pregnant after you had lost Christopher, like, what was that like?
Yeah, it was a whirlwind. I always say the hardest moment of my life was losing Christopher. The second
Hmm.
hardest chapter was pregnancy after loss. And I still can't believe, one, I survived Christopher's death, but I still can't believe I survived pregnancy after loss. It is so hard. And for the moms who are listening in who are pregnant after loss and you're struggling with, like for me, I struggled with how is there enough room in my heart to love 2 babies? I was so focused on loving Christopher. I didn't know how my heart was going to expand to love this other baby just as much. And my daughter is now Earthside. We actually just celebrated her first birthday this past weekend, which was like such an emotional milestone. And I thank God every day that she's come home. She didn't heal me, but she helped with my healing. And
Hmm.
I would love to dive into pregnancy after loss. I even parenting after loss, because going back into the hospital brought in like a lot of flashbacks again. And so did pregnancy, right?
Yeah.
The last time I had an ultrasound, it was finding out Christopher passed. And then I was getting an ultrasound at like 6 weeks to see if we see a sac or anything. Like it
Right.
we're reliving so much. And like a lot of people who experience a trauma of any sort, um, let's say a very bad car accident, they may choose never to drive again or have someone else drive because that anxiety is so there. And I understand that. And when we're pregnant after loss, we're literally back in that position again, being so vulnerable to loss. And there's still that side of hope too. Finding out I was pregnant with
Yeah.
Veronica was again super planned because I'm that kind of planner, but it took
Hmm.
longer to conceive her than I had hoped for. And so that was a hard part, was like the amount of time it took me is nothing compared to others who experience years of infertility. It's nothing compared to that. But it was really hard every time I got my period. And I found my period itself was a huge trigger. It just reminded me of
Yeah.
like being postpartum after Christopher. You're saying, yeah, too. You found the same thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah, every month my period would come, and it was almost like, and this was while it wasn't so much right away, it was
mm,
while we were trying to conceive again.
yes,
Like it was almost like I was reliving her loss like all over again for some reason.
exactly.
Yet on one hand it was like it was the devastation all over again. Yet on another hand, it was almost as badly as I wanted to be pregnant again. Like I
Hmm.
wanted it badly. It was almost a relief
Yes, it's
because I
both.
knew that I wasn't going to be having to experience the fear of being pregnant again. So it was
Yeah,
like just as equally relieving as it was
that's true.
uh, uh super emotional and upset about it, you know?
That's exactly it. I felt the
Yeah.
exact same way. And in fact, I feel like only after, for me personally, everyone's timeline's different. Only once I passed Christopher's first birthday in heaven, that's the month later I got pregnant. And I remember I went to a yoga class and it was a meditation, and I told the teacher my story, and she did this meditation about the new year, and it was all about opening your womb space. And it wasn't for fertility, there's people of all ages and men and women there at this yoga class. But for me, I realized I say I want to have another baby, but I don't think I've almost like nesting, how we nest in our houses and get a room ready. I mentally, I was not ready to welcome another baby. And that meditation helped me realize that. It was like a prayer to my to God, and realizing with myself that I hadn't made space, and I couldn't imagine another baby in my uterus, in my womb. And that's when I realized, okay, I've got to get familiar with that idea that there will be another baby
Yeah.
there. And what helped me frame it was like Christopher set the space up, and now this other kid's gonna get to enjoy that space. But that was his first, and same way with the nursery.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you next, was setting up the nursery, because that I know for me that was very, it was an emotional thing, but for us, I didn't get pregnant I say right away. It was for you, as a month after his first um
Birthday.
birthday in heaven. For us it was over 2 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, cuz we're coming up on 3 years of her death. And so it 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 was her nursery for so
Yeah.
long that, and then it became, once I started like my podcast, and I started, on this journey of healing and helping other women and things like that, it became my space to do that too. And so it took on this identity of like, this is where I heal, this is where
Hmm.
I this is but it was still hers, like her nursery. So changing over the nursery from just hers, I put a reel out about it, like
Yeah,
all
I
about it,
saw
from
that and
just
I
hers
resonated so
to,
deeply with it.
yeah, to theirs. Like I didn't
Yeah.
want it to be, okay, it was hers and now it's his.
Yeah.
It was like, no, like I want it to be theirs. That's a very difficult thing to take on as a mother,
It is.
and especially when one of the children aren't here on earth, like that's a hard task and it takes a lot of courage to do.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about that, because that's something that people from on the outside looking in, like, you don't think about, unless I post the reel on Instagram and show
Yeah.
you what it looked like. You don't think about those parts of our journey, you know?
It's so true. And I'm someone who loves making our house a home. Like, I love homemaking. I love watching YouTube videos about homemaking, and I know you do too.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember
Yeah.
when I was setting up Christopher's nursery, I was watching like all these nursery videos on YouTube of how people organized, like how they turn the dresser into the change table and where to put the diapers on this side and that. And like I had his room ready with his clothes washed and sized, everything ready to go. And it stayed stagnant like that for the whole year after
Yeah.
his birth. And then once I was pregnant, I slowly started turning it, like you said, not just into one baby's nursery, but another, to the point where we used to call it Christopher's room. And then once I was pregnant, I just started calling it the nursery, because I couldn't say it's Veronica's room. And to this day, it's now switched back into my office where I record, and Veronica has since moved into a bigger room as she's gotten bigger. But for the first 5 months of her coming home, she used that room, and I would always say the nursery. It was my way of acknowledging that it was Christopher's too. It was a really hard switch to just say Veronica's room. And I
Yeah.
slowly started putting his things away, and I felt like a bad mom. And
Yeah.
it's so hard because it's like, who am I moving on? I don't want to. Like I had his hand and feet molds on display on the change mat on the dresser. And I had it like that with a rosary and a crucifix. I had all these things and his pictures all laid out. But I knew that eventually she's going to be needing to get changed on this mat, and I don't want them to
Right.
break. So I packed them up so nicely. I went to Home Sense, which in the States is Home Goods, and I bought these beautiful boxes and I put all of his trinkets and things in there. And then I have a label maker, of course. And so I labeled everything and I tried to pick labels and pick labels that seem kind of normal and not about death. So like I did Christopher's seasonal decorations, and it's all the decorations I put up of at the cemetery at different times of the year. Like he has Easter decorations, he has spring decorations, fall decorations. So I packed all of that up in a box. I have another box of like his hand and feet molds and fingerprints and handprints. So I found labeling and giving pretty boxes to all of his things. I felt like I was paying a lot of respect to all of his items, and I did it very slowly. I made a playlist on Spotify of songs that helped me and still help me and reflect with on Christopher. And so I played that played that music while I was doing his like takedown, sort of so to speak, of his nursery, just to feel
Yeah,
really connected. And there was a lot of tears. I can't deny
of
that.
course.
And like switching out the clothes was really hard because it's clothes that he never got to wear. And I'm sure you felt the
Right.
same way with Layla. It's clothes that she didn't get to wear. And some things, like if they're neutral enough, I kept them in the drawer. And other
Hmm.
things were way too boyish for a little girl to wear. And I just felt like if I put her, initially I thought I would just let her wear all the blue stuff. But when I brought her home, I found that was actually really triggering for me personally. And that there was some things I had kept in the dresser that I ended up saying, no, this is actually just going to be for Christopher. So I found it
Yeah.
was an ongoing thing.
Yeah, the clothes for me has always been such a hard thing.
Yeah.
Anytime that was one of the things because we switched up some of the things in the nursery. I mean, little things, probably things that nobody else would notice other
Hmm.
than us. What we kept in the crib, what was on top of the dresser. You know what I mean? As people would give us gifts, we would kind of add it to the shelves, and memories
Yeah.
of her and things that reminded us of her. So I wouldn't say it stayed exactly the same, but what the one thing that did stay almost exactly the same was her dresser full of clothes because I wasn't taking things in and out.
Yeah.
Now, for the first year, what my mother had done, and this was so special to me, is every month or every holiday, it was more like a holiday, my mother would buy me an outfit that would fit her size
Oh,
that she would have been for me to lay in her crib. And so those were very special to me. Of course, those, even if this next baby was a girl, like I still would, those would be hers. And so clothes has always been just so special to me in that way. And so going through the clothes, because we're opposite. You had Christopher first
yeah.
and then Veronica. For us, it's, we had our daughter first and now our son, but it's the same thing. You had one gender and then the next. Um, and so figuring out like what's hers, there was like a couple of categories, like what is hers? Like this will never be anybody else's except hers
Yeah.
ever again.
It's true.
What is neutral enough or not necessarily not special, but usable enough that I would still love to use this
Yeah.
item on any baby of any gender. And then what can I put away for another maybe future daughter that I would love to say,
Exactly.
this was your sister's and you get to wear it. And it's not that it wasn't special, but it wasn't like, no, this is hers. Because there are things in that room that went in a box and it is literally
It's
hers.
just
And
nice.
I want to be able to touch it and look at it. It's not like it's locked up forever and we'll never see it again, but it's hers and no other baby will probably ever use it. And I think that's really special. I think that is one of the ways that we get to parent our babies that aren't living is because we parent our children so uniquely. Even the difference between you and me and me and every mother on planet Earth, we parent so differently and so uniquely. And this is one of the ways that we get to uniquely parent our babies that aren't living is how we decide to do these kinds of things, to what we want to keep, what we want to use, what we want to put on display, and even though it's a hard task and it takes a lot of courage, it's an honor and a joy to be able to uniquely parent my daughter
Hmm.
like nobody else on the planet,
It's true.
and I'm sure you can relate to that.
I couldn't relate with that more. Like it's so true, and we find ways of continuously
Mm.
parenting our babies that have passed. And like you said, that brought back reminders of having those different piles. Like I remember sitting on the floor in
Yeah.
the nursery and, okay, this pile is for things that will just be for Christopher. I'll pack those up. This could be, I'll keep this in the dresser. And then these ones,
Yeah.
okay, this is the different gender, so I'll put that aside. And God willing, in the future, if we were to have another boy, that could be worn by them. Yeah, you're right. It's like a
Right.
whole, it doesn't happen, at least for me, the changing of the nursery didn't happen in one day. It was slowly over a while. Was that for you, or did you
Yeah.
do it in one day?
Because it kind of shifted into like my office space and my recording space for a little while. That's
Hmm.
not where I am anymore, but I would say that shifted over time.
Yeah.
However, when I made like the big transformation, like that reel that you saw on my
Hmm.
Instagram, that was a 1 day process, because what I had to do, and I'm sure you had to do too, but I don't know, if you stored things differently. All of the baby stuff. I'm talking of the big stuff,
The
the
bassinet.
boppy,
Yeah.
the rocker, the bassinet, all of the things that never got touched. And it's like, okay, well, this is expensive stuff.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to buy all
No.
new big baby gear, the
Yeah.
pack and play, stuff like that. Pulling that out, that we stored that all away in like the attic space that was attached to the nursery.
Okay.
And so, in order to, call it flip, quote unquote, the nursery, I had to pull all that stuff out, and it was just easier to do it all in one, one couple hours span, to go through her clothes, to go through what I, wanted to use. Because I had to decide, I have my son's baby shower coming up, and I need to know what I needed. So
That's
it was kind
true.
of like, well, if I'm doing this, I'm just gonna do it all at once. And I don't like to say rip the Band-Aid, but it's kind of like ripping the
Yeah.
Band-Aid, because I knew it was going to be hard. I knew there were going to be lots of tears, but I also knew it was going to be very healing in a way, and another way to include her in this next pregnancy and this next step of our journey. Like, and any excuse I have to include her, like, I'm going to include her.
That's true.
So as hard as it was a healing day. It was.
Yeah, there is something really healing about making that space and opening your heart, because setting up the nursery is another way of opening your heart to this new
Yeah.
baby joining the family. And I found during pregnancy after loss, there's days where I was more fearful and days where I was more hopeful. And so I would
Yeah.
listen to myself and how I was feeling. And if that was a hopeful day, those are the days that I'm going to be working on the nursery. And so, like you said, that's the day to
Mm.
rip off the band-aid and get a lot done, because you have no idea what tomorrow's going to be like. So if I'm feeling good
Yeah.
now, I'm in a good headspace, now's the day I'm going to do something.
I really love that. I think I did that too, but I don't think I was ever able to put into words like you just did, that I could feel like
Yeah.
this is the day. And
Yeah.
then there were days where I was like, oh, no, 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 like, this is not the day. And that's a really good way to put it. There were some hopeful days and some fearful days. It's like, you have to learn, because grief, it can be a roller
Hmm.
coaster. It comes in waves, and the waves might slow down over time, but the waves still come.
It's so true.
And so we have to be in tune with our grief and in tune with our healing, and know when is, and give ourselves permission to set up boundaries on days where we're more fearful, especially when we're pregnant after loss. Like,
Yeah.
we got to set up a lot of boundaries and protect our hearts and protect our minds and all of those things. Like, that's our responsibility. And we do it for us. We do it in honor of the baby that we lost. We do it out of protection and love, and we
For this
want to
little
fall in love
baby.
with this baby too. We do it for all three of us
Yeah.
and our husbands and whoever's along the ride. Like, we do it for all of us. And that's our responsibility, and that's a big task to ask a mother who has
Mm-hmm.
lost a baby and is now expecting another one and can be fearful and is riding the waves of grief and is parenting other children and running a home. Like,
It's a
that's a
lot.
tall order, and that's why we are friggin'
Yeah.
superheroes. Like, at the end of the day, like, we are superheroes, and I will not discredit or discount, you
The
know
courage and the
a
bravery.
woman's and a mother's. Yes, the courage and the bravery is exactly right. We're coming close to, like, our 1 hour
Mhm.
time slot, but I want to talk about one more thing,
Yeah.
because I'm very curious. I've actually never asked this question to anybody before, and I'm very curious if maybe you can relate to it, because I know that when I got pregnant after my loss, I felt like almost guilty because of this community that I had created.
Hmm.
Not created, but I had joined, and I had all of these women who were also lost moms, and a lot of them had, had a stillbirth, and I almost felt like I had created this, like, identity. It's funny. I'm wearing a sweater that says mom to an angel,
Yeah.
of a lost mom. And to the people who listen to my podcast and even my friends and family, my Instagram following, I I was a lost mom. And so when I found out that I was pregnant again, I felt this really strongly. Like, I was almost nervous that I was going to, like, lose other lost moms' trust or something, because now I could maybe no longer relate, or now that am
Yeah.
I making it sense? Like,
You
is this
are.
something that you experienced?
Yes, I did. For I totally resonate with what you said, and the way I framed it for myself was I'm living my story. I'm sharing my truth, and it will resonate with those who need to hear the same message. And for me, it's that, like, I'll laugh again, I'll dance again, I'll find hope again. And bringing home Veronica, my rainbow baby girl, it took so much courage and bravery that I hope that others following along the journey can see, if they're earlier on, like what life could look like. And everyone's life goes on a different trajectory, and not everyone brings home a rainbow baby, but we could heal no matter what.
Right,
And
right.
so for me, I totally get your feelings of, like, where do I stand? Who am I? Like,
Yeah.
what club am I part of now? And like I had mentioned before, when I was setting up Christopher's nursery, I watched YouTube videos on how people set up the nurseries. Like, even when I'm cleaning the kitchen, I like watching videos of how people tidy their kitchens and organize it. That's just something I like to do. It keeps me on task. I don't get distracted. I do it. When I
Yeah.
was setting up the nursery for Veronica, I felt like I couldn't resonate with any of the nursery videos on YouTube, and I
Mm,
didn't watch them. I just listened to music on my Spotify playlist. And I think that is an example of, like, not knowing what team we're part of now. I'm not, I can't connect with that person who's excited and made that YouTube video of how they set up their nursery, because I've been there, I've done that. But
yeah.
I don't resonate anymore with the nursery that I had for Christopher, where it was like a memorial room. It's now a room that honors both Christopher's life and another baby's life. And so
Yeah.
I find that we could, by sharing our stories, we can pave the way and give examples of what parenting both Earthside and angel babies can look like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very well put. And I think something that I realized too is because, like you said, not every mother who suffers a miscarriage or a stillbirth or child loss, like baby loss in any form, gets to have a rainbow baby, gets to bring a living child home. And I know that I had a handful of women in my community that I was following their stories. They still haven't been able to do that. And I know my goal was to find healing and not place all of my hope
Yeah.
in my future living child, because there are women out there who don't end up having a successful living child. And so one of the things that I needed to remind myself was my story might not be for everybody.
Yeah.
My story might not be for the moms anymore who never get to bring their living child home. And I'm still not that person. I'm not in that category yet. I'm very hopeful that I
Hmm.
will be, and I remain hopeful and I remain positive, and I'm not saying like, I don't see it in the near future. I do, and that's where my hope and my positivity and all those things come from, but I'm not even like you said, where do I fall?
Yeah.
And what I kept telling myself, which helped myself kind of work past this like guilt or like maybe like loss of identity, or even sometimes it's not sadness. This is so weird to say, but when you find an identity in something, and my whole identity isn't in a lost mom, it's just that's where I created a platform, and that's what I created a whole following after, was grief and loss and all these things. You almost feel like you connect with that identity.
Yeah.
It's not my whole identity, but I have connected so much to the person that people now follow, and they can resonate with me as the lost mom. And so in a way it was almost like, oh, I don't want to lose that connection that I have with people. Like, I'm certainly not upset, I'm not bummed that I'm pregnant again,
Of course.
I'm not I don't want to change it, like I wouldn't change it, but you get nervous that you're going to lose that connection. But what really helped me was reminding myself that my story might not be for everyone. It might not be for the mothers who never bring their children home. It might not be for the moms who have 10 children, 10 living children, and had one stillbirth. Like, it's our stories are so unique and so different. And I think I tried to like put myself in a box almost, or maybe made my message too broad. And it was really like, I'm going to narrow in on what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
And that's how I can connect the best with whoever is
Listening
able to
in.
connect with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever's
And we
listening,
get
whoever is sharing the same story in some way.
It's true. And we get tidbits from each person's story that resonates with us. It's never going to be
Yeah.
100%. But like when you're talking about the nursery and how you amalgamated, so to speak, both babies into that room, it's like, yeah, I resonate with that. And that's exactly what I did too. And like the shelf. And so other parents listening in can go, oh, that's a good idea to have a shelf in the room. And even after this little one is born, like we still have that shelf of Christopher's things, and that's his shelf. And even when she was born, her things don't go on that shelf. That's his shelf. And like
Yeah.
finding that happy medium of what works for you. And by you being honest about sharing your journey and like what's working for your family and how that's going to change, that gives other moms, I think, listening in, that permission for them as well to explore these different sides of our evolving identities.
Yeah. Yeah. Evolving. That's such a great word because it's so true. It's like I think that's why maybe for someone like you and I who live such planned, such rigid, such scheduled lives, we found our identity in
Hmm.
that. We rooted ourselves in that identity. I don't want to speak for you, but I know for me that was one of the hardest parts of having to go through this, was because I wasn't now just a lost mom or had my daughter died and all these things. I now was like, I am a different person. Like
Yeah.
that, I no longer fall into that category of person. I no longer can identify with living such a structured life, because this life that I've just been thrown into, it ain't structured, like it ain't rigid. Grief is not a boom, boom, boom. We're on and it's like, I have no choice
Yeah,
but to evolve. I have no choice but to move forward with how my story is evolving. I really love that word. So
it's true.
I
And
love that
and
you said that.
oh well, I found like it's constantly evolving and life is going to force us to evolve because
Yeah.
as during pregnancy after loss, as we start showing and our bump gets more and more obvious, like everyone and their mother asks us, how far along are you? What are you due? And they all mean well. Like
Right.
everyone's just so excited to see
Mhm.
this beautiful bump. And like you can be in line at the grocery store and the lady behind you could ask, like, oh, so when are you due, boy or girl? And like no one else knows how
Mhm.
sensitive those questions or triggering that could be for us. And by you sharing your story and how you navigate those questions as they come up, that's going to help other moms go, oh, that's a good way of wording it. Like for me, throughout pregnancy after loss, when someone would ask, is this your first? Like I was happy to share Christopher's story and say, actually,
Right.
Hopefully she's our first to come home. That's what I would always say. I hope she's our first to come home,
Mm,
but she actually has a big brother in heaven. And then someone would say, "Oh, like what happened?" is a common follow up, and I would say, he passed out at full term, and his name's Christopher, and like it helped me navigate the conversation. But my answer I found has since evolved. So throughout pregnancy after loss, I would always say that. And then after bringing Veronica home, I never thought that answer would evolve. I would always think I would say she's the first to come home. And
hmm
that's usually how I answer. If someone asks, is she your first? I'll say she's our first to come home. She has a brother in heaven. That's usually how I answer it. But it depends on the context. And so I had to learn how to manage my guilt when my answer changes depending on who's asking. For example, a couple months ago, I was doing a swim lesson with my daughter. And so it's me, and I'm holding my daughter in the pool. And the instructor, who's like 19 or something, asks if she's our first. And they're probably like looking to know if we have more kids to recruit them so that they can join the swim school kind of thing. Like they
Right.
don't really
Yeah.
want to know more details about my motherhood journey. And so I said yes, and that was one of the first times I ever said she was my first, and that was it. She's our
Mm,
only. And like the drive home, obviously bawling my eyes out and crying,
yeah.
but I realized, well, at that moment in time, I don't need to share Christopher's story to every single person, some 19-year-old who's
Yeah.
teaching me how to teach my daughter how to swim at like 6 months old. And so I found our answers and how we talk about our motherhood will also evolve. And then there's layers and emotions that come with that. But it's always done out of love and protecting our baby story too.
Yeah. Yes, because I think sensing, is this a person who's, are you really asking me?
Yeah.
Like, do you really want to know my story? And it's like, at first, when you're early on after your loss, you just want to
Tell
tell
everyone.
everybody because you're like, I want everyone to know
Yeah.
I lost my baby and she's no longer here and all of the things. And as we evolve and as our story progresses, we almost get a little bit more protective. I'm like, wait, are you worth
Yeah.
knowing, are you worth the time of explaining? Because it's not less
No.
important or special, it's actually more important and special, and I'm going to guard it and I'm going to protect it. And it's almost like that guilt has been like released of not having to tell every single person that you come across about your child that died.
Yeah.
It's almost like a release of guilt because you're like, I no longer have to feel guilty for not explaining every detail to every person I come across, but now I can protect it
Yeah.
and share it with who I feel is not special enough, but worth sharing it to. Like you said, he's probably just trying to like recruit you to sign up. It's like, all right, maybe this isn't the time,
Yeah.
maybe this isn't the moment for it. So I really love that. And it's funny you say, people ask questions and they say certain things when we're pregnant again, and they have no idea how potentially triggering it can be and all of these things. And I have found that being pregnant after loss currently, I have to be responsible for protecting my own heart,
Mm-hmm.
even with a lot of the times with the closest people around me who know about my loss, who are very well aware of my loss. But when they haven't suffered a loss themselves, they don't know that those questions can feel triggering or can be hard to answer, or I have to go, hang on, how do I answer this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I have found it's like another layer of grief and loss that like we didn't ask for, and it's kind of like an unfair layer that the pressure for us to have to answer these questions when they make us so uncomfortable, it's like kind of unfair. But I
True.
resonate with what you're saying, with people, kind of asking these questions, whether they have an idea or not. We're kind of forced to go every time, okay, how do I answer this?
It's true.
Like it's like unfair, but it's like, all right, I that used to stress me out. It
Yeah.
used to be like, this is so unfair. I don't want to have to. And now I kind of like laugh it off because I'm like, again, there's something so special about her story and my story and the way that her birth, life, death relates to my current life and this baby's life,
Yeah.
and pregnancy and all these things, I get like protective. And so now it doesn't feel as personal, and it almost feels like I have the power and responsibility to present to you whatever answer I feel comfortable with, if that makes sense.
It's true. And how we were talking before about what club are we part of now, I
Yeah.
remember that also smacking me in the face postpartum when I started joining baby groups, like in-person baby groups. It's
Mm,
like, how much of my story do I share on day one? Not a lot of it,
yeah.
because I don't like I have to open my heart when I'm ready. And so I found that our identities are just constantly evolving, our answers to things are evolving. Um, Two things I want to share that really helped me with pregnancy after loss, because the anxiety, it comes like it's fearful, and my mind would play tricks on me and go, how would I survive this again? Um,
Yeah.
was two things that helped with the navigating all of this. One was using the app Count the Kicks. I just want to
Mhm.
shout that off the rooftops, because I use that app starting at 26 weeks, and I downloaded it. It was free, and you pretty much press the button every time you feel a kick. And I started to notice Veronica's movements and how long it would take her to typically get to like 10 kicks. And then that really equipped me, because when I noticed her movements were slower, I went to the hospital right away at around like 29 weeks to go get checked out. And it was so scary going to get checked out. But I'm grateful I did. Everything was okay. But it also ripped the band-aid off of, for me, going to the hospital meant something scary and something terrifying is about to happen. And so I'm
Yeah.
grateful I went at around 28 weeks, because then I got it out of my system and I felt more comfortable to go back again if I needed to, because I needed to remind myself I was not a burden going there to get checked out. They know our story and they're just so happy we're there, and they're going to do everything they can to monitor this little one with us. That helped.
Yeah.
Another thing that helped, like the day before ultrasound appointments or just any appointment in general, that was when my anxiety was at an all-time high. I would do self-care things. And I don't know why it helped. And I just learned now, my algorithm must be tailored to this, because I saw a reel the other day saying self-care helps us when we're feeling anxious, because in the animal kingdom, an animal never grooms itself if it feels like it's in danger. They only do it when they're safe. And I found throughout pregnancy after loss, like if I would blow dry my hair or spend a little more time on my makeup or do my nails or like do an everything shower and then moisturize really well after, like I found little things like that helped me feel calm and safe before an appointment. And that really helped manage my anxiety.
That doesn't surprise me at all, because those are some of the things that I did so early on in my loss that
Yeah.
helped me come out of an anxious state, help me regulate my nervous system and all those things. So that doesn't surprise me at all. That doesn't sound silly to me at all. That actually is like, yeah, that makes total sense. And I've completely reworked my life to make sure that I always have time built in for myself, whether it's things like um an everything shower and making sure my face looks good and my nails are done and things like that, or whether it's things like internal self-care, more mental and emotional, like whatever that looks like to
Yeah.
you. I've completely reworked my life. It looks nothing like it used to make sure that those are top priority, because I know that's what helps with that fear, that anxiety, that regulation of my nervous system, because it changes
It
everything.
does.
It changes everything about how we manage our fears and anxieties. And like we've been talking about this whole episode, like pregnancy after loss, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. And so you don't have to learn, but it's smart to learn how to manage that. It's
Yeah.
smart to, you don't have to go through it just terribly afraid the whole time. There are tools that we can use to help ourselves that are both equally usable on our healing journey,
Mm-hmm.
like through our grief, and they're usable currently to help us get through these current fears and anxieties of this pregnancy because of our past experiences. And so those are some really good tips. I know that I'm coming up on that like well, I'm almost 24 weeks, and that's right around the
Congratulations,
time where
Emmy.
my doctor. Thank you. I'm really excited. I'm excited, but I have not felt super fearful or have had a ton of anxiety. I've had moments, but I wouldn't describe this pregnancy as super fearful yet. I have a feeling the third trimester is going to, of course, be a little different as I approach. Um, and my doctor said around 24, she said, don't come to me with anxiety. She was joking, but she was like, don't come to me with your anxieties before 24 weeks as far as like the movements
Yeah,
are concerned.
exactly.
She
Yeah.
was obviously joking. She's like, I'm, call anytime, come in anytime, like we'll do whatever you want. So she's great, but basically once I hit that 24 mark is when I'll probably be getting the
Starting to
counter
track.
picks out,
Yeah.
because that's one of the first things I learned about after my loss, because that was one of the first
Yeah.
signs, for me that something was wrong. And so those are some great tips. And we do kind of have to wrap up here. We've kind of hit that 1 hour mark, but it has been so nice. Just like I said, I just wanted to chat with you, and that's exactly what this was. And so I hope everyone who is listening feels like when they come to these podcasts, when they come to these episodes, that they are truly in good company and in a safe place, because you're talking to women and to people who know what you're dealing with and know your sadness and your grief and what a lot of these things feel like. And so I just really appreciate you taking the time to, because I know you have your own podcast, so to come onto my podcast, to share your story and to just, put everything out there for these women who need us, who need us. And so before we sign off, I want to give you an opportunity to just put out there anything that you want to put out there, your platform, your Instagram, your podcast, so that people can follow you, and I'll add it all in the show notes as well.
Well, thanks, Emmy. That honestly, the honor is all mine. I'm so grateful to be on your platform and to get to share my story and Christopher's story and Veronica's story, who I hear her. She just woke up from her nap, so she got the memo.
Perfect.
I hear her waking up. And it's honestly just an honor to always connect with moms who've experienced pregnancy or infant loss at any time in their lives, and even moms who've experienced loss 20 years before we did. It
Yeah.
touches us, and we're part of, like we were saying, what club are we part of? No matter what goes on in our lives, we're always part of this club. And for those who are interested in learning more about my story and about my journey, it's called the Still Hopeful Podcast on Instagram. You could find my podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. You'll find me there, the Still Hopeful Podcast. And it's a place where I started recording only once I was pregnant after loss. And so I documented my whole pregnancy, like how I got ready for appointments, how I navigated the first trimester, the second, the third, how I got ready for induction. Like I laid it out all on the table and shared what's been working for me, and then postpartum too. Because I want everyone to know that they're not alone. And like how we talked about, everyone's story has those specifics, but there's so much in common between our stories, and feeling less alone is what we need to do with helping one another.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfectly said.
Thanks,
Well,
Emmy.
thank you again so much for your time, Serena. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who is listening. I hope this episode was encouraging, inspiring, comforting, whatever it needed to be for you. I hope it was that for you. So don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more episodes just like this one. I can't wait to chat with you all again really soon. Signing off for now, your hope dealer, Emmy Smaz.